Hi, I'm Patrick, and I'm going to be teaching you how to play Warhammer Age of Sigmar, the fast-paced game of tabletop strategy where armies battle to decide the fate of the mortal realms. You'll build, paint, and play with models representing heroes, villains, and incredible monsters. Whatever kind of army you want to command, from the fanatical worshippers of the Dark Gods to hordes of killer greenskins, you'll find just the right force for you. You'll need tactics, skill, and of course a little bit of luck to emerge victorious. But first, we're going to need a few things: models, measures, dice, and a tabletop to play on. And we need a friend to play with. Over this series of videos, we're going to show you how to play Warhammer Age of Sigmar. We'll show you how to set up your mighty army and march it across the battlefield before unleashing devastating shooting attacks and finally crushing your foe in the maelstrom of brutal close combat. By the time we're done, you'll be able to begin your own conquest of the mortal realms, playing your first games with confidence. Let's get started. Welcome to the second part of our Warhammer Age of Sigmar Learn to Play series, where we're looking at the basic principles behind the game. If you've never played Warhammer Age of Sigmar before, these are the things that you need to know before we get started. To play a game of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, you need to know how to win. A battle pack outlines how to muster your armies, create your battlefields, deploy your troops, and most importantly, your victory conditions. They also include any special rules or information you need to know when you're playing, along with the type of battle that you'll be fighting. Maybe it's a grinding frontal assault or a daring breakthrough, where speed and smarts will win the day. In a game of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, each player commands an army made up of citadel miniatures. The battle pack you've selected will explain how big your army can be, from small scouting forces to ground-shaking armies capable of conquering entire cities. An army in Warhammer Age of Sigmar is made up of lots of different units. All models move and fight as part of their unit. These units might be a heroic squad of soldiers, a devastating war machine, a powerful monster, or maybe a noble hero. Each unit in your army has a points value, which reflects how powerful or rare it is. These values are used to make sure your games are fair and exciting battles of wits and skill. If a unit consists of multiple models, then all the models in that unit will move and fight together. Make sure every model is within 1 inch of another model from the same unit at all times, in an unbroken chain. This is called unit coherency. As we go through this Learn to Play guide, we'll explain more about units and how they move and how they fight. For now, it's important to remember 2 things. All units in your army are friendly units, and all units in your opponent's army are enemy units. Every unit in Warhammer Age of Sigmar has its own war scroll. These are handy guides that contain all the information you'll need to use these models in your games. War scrolls can represent anything, from units of basic warriors to terrifying monsters to actual living gods. War scrolls tell you everything you need to know, from how fast they move, how powerful their weapons are, and how brave they are when they find themselves in the midst of a life and death struggle. As you watch these videos and learn how to play Warhammer Age of Sigmar, we'll be referring back to our war scrolls as they tell us how our units move and fight. Battles have to happen somewhere, and in Warhammer Age of Sigmar, we call that place the battlefield. These can range from the lava pits of Akshi, the realm of fire, to the jungles of Gairan, the realm of life, to anything in between. The battle pack you are using for your game will tell you the size of the battlefield and what terrain features to use. In this Learn to Play, we won't be covering terrain rules, but if you want to learn more, you can find them in the rulebook. In Warhammer Age of Sigmar, we use measurements to see how far our models move across the battlefield, whether their weapons are in range of their foe, and all sorts of other situations. All measurements in the game are made in inches. We recommend that you use a measurer or a tape measure. If ever you need to measure between 2 models, and this happens a lot, always measure between the 2 nearest points on the model's bases. Even the finest warriors in the mortal realm sometimes miss their targets when making attacks. So in a game of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, we use dice rolls to see if a shot hits its mark, whether we wound enemy fighters, where the nerve of your warriors can hold in the face of adversity. The dice used for Warhammer Age of Sigmar are standard 6-sided dice, often referred to as D6. When playing, you'll need a few of these, so make sure you've got some to hand. Sometimes you'll need to add your dice rolls together. If you need to add the results from 2 dice together, for example, this will be written as 2d6. Sometimes you'll be asked to roll a d3. To do this, roll a d6 and halve the value, rounding up. All games of Warhammer Age of Sigmar are divided into a series of battle rounds, where both players get a turn to move and fight with their armies as they bring down devastation upon their enemies. Join us in our next video, where we'll be taking a closer look at the turn sequence of each battle round. Welcome to the third part of our Warhammer Age of Sigmar Learn to Play series, where we're looking at the turn sequence and learning how battle rounds work. This is where the action happens. Your army makes its way across the battlefield, unleashing devastating shooting attacks before charging in to utterly crush your foes. A game of Warhammer Age of Sigmar is played in a series of battle rounds, and each battle round, both players take a turn. At the start of each battle round, each player rolls a dice. Whoever rolls the highest gets to decide whether they want to go first or second. This is called the priority roll. If you go first, you get a command point, but if you go second, you get 2. These can be spent on special command abilities, which can swing a battle in your favour. For more detail on the command abilities, such as all-out attack and at the double, check out the Warhammer Age of Sigmar rulebook. A player's turn is divided into 6 phases, each of which will be covered by their own video. Hero Phase. Here your mightiest warriors muster their skills to bend the outcome of the battle to their will. Movement Phase. During this phase, your units manoeuvre across the battlefield. Shooting Phase. This is when your units fire deadly ranged weapons at your enemies. Charge Phase. Your units storm into combat with the enemy, and your monsters go on epic rampages. Combat Phase. Here, both players' units pile in and attack with melee weapons. Battleshock Phase. In the final phase, both players test the courage of their surviving units. When you've completed all of the phases, it's your opponent's turn. When you've both taken a turn, the battle round is complete and a new one begins. This continues until the game ends and one player emerges victorious. In our next video, we'll be kicking things off with the hero phase. Welcome to the fourth part of our Warhammer Age of Sigmar Learn to Play series, where we're looking at the hero phase. This is where potent magical abilities are unleashed, prayers to the gods of the mortal realms are uttered, and where champions from both armies perform mighty deeds that could change the outcome of the battle. Your heroes aren't just exceptional fighters, their peerless tactical nous and exceptional resilience are famous across the mortal realms. This is reflected in-game by heroic actions, a set of deeds that let you shrug off wounds, dispel hostile magic, or perform other game-changing feats. Whatever you choose for your hero to do, it can have a massive impact upon the battle. Not sure which of your models is a hero? Just take a look at their war scroll. If you see the hero keyword listed, then they are one of the legendary warriors of the mortal realms. Any wizards in your army can cast spells they know in the hero phase. These can range from deadly invocations that lay waste to your enemy to spells that can heal your own units. Some of the magics in the mortal realms are so powerful they persist from turn to turn and can even move across the battlefield, consuming everything in their path in a whirlwind of deadly sorcery. Priests in your army can call forth the power of their gods to intervene in the battle. These prayers can bless your army or smite any non-believers that would stand in your way. Be careful though, if your gods don't like your chanting, they'll unleash their divine wrath on you. The rulebook is a place where you can find out more about prayers and all things magic. We can't promise you'll learn how to pull a rabbit from a hat or saw someone in half, but you'll be well equipped to unleash your priests, wizards and warlocks upon your enemies. After the hero phase, next up we have the movement phase. Welcome to the fifth part of our Warhammer Age of Sigmar Learn to Play series, where we're looking at the movement phase. The movement phase is where you march your army across the battlefield to get them close enough to carry out grievous violence upon your enemy or to claim crucial objectives. This is also where you can tactically withdraw from any fights where you might find yourself outmatched. Okay, let's call it what it really is, retreating. Each of your units can do one of four things in the movement phase. Make a normal move, run, retreat, or remain stationary. To make a normal move, a unit can travel a distance in inches up to its move characteristics. Let's start with these Hobgrot Slitters. They're malicious little brutes, armed with slitter knives for stabbing up their foes and sulfuric scrap grenades which they can hurl to cause maximum carnage. As we can see from their war scroll, they can move up to 5 inches. To run, we roll a d6 and add the result in inches to the unit's move characteristic. As you can see, running lets your models cover more ground, but that extra speed comes at a cost. Units that run cannot shoot or charge later in the same turn. Now you don't have to move all of your units, you can choose to remain stationary with any of the units you want. Perfect if you're already holding a great position. When we do move our units, there are a few things we need to remember. The first is unit coherency. All models in a unit must finish their move in a single group within 1 inch of another model from the same unit. The second is that you can't move within 3 inches of an enemy unit. Third, models can't move over other models. And fourth, models can't move off the edge of the battlefield. When you finish moving all the models in a unit, select the next unit in your army you want to move, and repeat the process until you've moved all the units you want to. It's worth mentioning that you can choose a final option when selecting your units in the movement phase. You can choose for them to retreat. Perfect if you're stuck in a fight that you can't win. When you retreat, you can't shoot or charge later in the turn. There are also some more in-depth rules that deal with how your units move over terrain and for any models that can fly, which are fully covered in the rulebook. When you've moved all of your units, the movement phase is complete and it's time to move on to the shooting phase. Welcome to the 6th part of our Warhammer Age of Sigmar Learn to Play series, where we're looking at the shooting phase. Whether you're using slings, arrows, or warpstone-infused lightning cannons, this is where you slaughter your foes at range. First up, we need to pick a unit to shoot with. We'll choose this unit of Hobgrot Slitters with their sulfuric scrap grenades. The war scroll for this unit tells us how far it can shoot, how many shots it gets, and what you need to roll to hit with the weapon. Next, we pick a target. It has to be an enemy unit that's in range of our weapons, like this unlucky unit of Vindictors, the noble shield wall of the God King Sigmar. We have 10 Hobgrot Slitters who are all going to throw their weapons, so we roll 10 dice. Each time we roll a 4, 5, or a 6, our attack hits. 6 hits, nice one! The war scroll also tells us what we need to roll to damage the enemy unit. So, we need to roll a 3, 4, 5, or a 6 to wound the enemy. 3 wounds! The Vindictors wear impressive armour though, and there is a chance that will protect them from our attacks. This means your opponent has a chance to save them. If they roll a 3, 4, 5, or a 6, the noxious shrapnel from our sulfuric scrap grenades merely glances off that burnished Stormcast armour and they remain unharmed. But our weapons are good at cracking open even the hardiest of armour, and they have a rend value of -1. This is applied to the Vindictor's saving throw, making that 3 or more into a roll of 4 or more. The Vindictors roll 1 dice for each wound inflicted, needing a 4, 5, or a 6 to ignore it. Oh, unlucky! 3 failures, which means that the Vindictors take 3 points of damage and so lose 3 wounds. The Golden Clad Warriors are pretty resilient though, and they have 2 wounds each. That means that our 3 wounds have slain 1 member of that unit. We still have another wound that rolls over onto a different model, meaning they're wounded. It's a good idea to place a dice or a wound marker next to injured fighters as a reminder. If we attack that unit again, any wounds we inflict must be allocated to wounded fighters first. When each of the eligible units is fired, the shooting phase is over, and it's time to get up close and personal in the charge phase. Welcome to the 7th part of our Warhammer Age of Sigmar Learn to Play series, where we're looking at the charge phase. This is where your units scream war cries at their enemies as they rush across the battlefield to tear them limb from limb. You can only charge if you're within 12 inches of an enemy unit, but you can charge any enemy unit that's within range. So, start your charge phase by picking a unit and making a charge roll. To do this, roll 2 dice and add the total together. This is the maximum number of inches that each model in your unit can move during the charge phase. To make your charge move, the distance has to be enough for the first model that you move to get within 1/4 of an inch of an enemy model. If not, the charge fails and no models in the charging unit can move this phase. Having softened up their target in the shooting phase, it's time for the Hobgrot Slitters to charge into combat. They're 8 inches away, so we need to roll at least 8 on our 2 dice. Great, we made it! Now when you charge, you have to obey the same rules as in the movement phase. Your unit has to be in coherency at the end of the move, and no models can travel further than the distance you've rolled. Next time we'll be looking at the combat phase. Let's see how those Hobgrot Slitters get on. Welcome to the 8th part of our Warhammer Age of Sigmar Learn to Play series, where we're taking a look at the combat phase. This is where your units fight out vicious battles to the death. In the combat phase, any units that are within 3 inches of an enemy unit can make attacks. Starting with the player whose turn it is, you take it in turns to either pick an eligible unit to fight, or you can pass. Once both players pass in succession, it's the end of the phase. It's important to note though, if one player runs out of eligible units to fight with, the opposing player can still continue to choose their remaining units, one at a time. When you select a unit, there are 2 steps. Number 1, pile in. The first thing the chosen unit does when it's selected to fight is pile in. If you choose to pile in, each model moves up to 3 inches and must finish its pile in move no further away from the nearest enemy unit than it was at the start of its turn, and still in coherency. Number 2, make close combat attacks. Any model that is in range can fight. Our Hobgrot Slitters have a range of 1 inch, so the entire unit is in range to attack the Vindictors. As we can see from their war scroll, they each get 2 attacks. As with our shooting attacks, the war scroll tells us what we need to roll to hit and to wound the enemy unit. We get to roll 20 dice for this attack, and we're looking for 4s, 5s and 6s to hit. Great! 12 hits! Now we need 5s and 6s to wound the Vindictors. Nice one! The Vindictors still get to make their saving throws though, and as we saw in the shooting phase, their glorious gold armour protects them on a 3, 4, 5 or a 6. So 2 wounds on the Vindictors. That kills the model that we wounded in the shooting phase and does 1 wound to another model in the unit. Let's pop a marker down to remember. Then, it will be the Stormcast player's turn to pick a unit to fight with. They could attack back against the Hobgrot Slitters with the Vindictors, or they could choose any other eligible unit that hasn't yet fought in the combat phase. Once every eligible unit has fought, the combat phase is over, and we move on to the Battleshock phase to see if our brave warriors stay in the fight. Welcome to the 9th part of our Warhammer Age of Sigmar Learn to Play series, where we're looking at the Battleshock phase. Even the bravest hearts may tremble with fear amid the horrors of battle, and the Battleshock phase is where both players test to see if their warriors are brave enough to stay in the fight when the going gets tough. Every unit that's had models slain in this turn has to take a Battleshock test. To do this, we roll a dice and add the number of casualties from the unit. So for the Vindictors, we roll a dice. Next, we add in the 2 for the warriors that we've lost, giving us 6. We compare that to the bravery statistic from the unit's war scroll. We need our total to be under this to pass the test. Great, they passed. If you fail the test, 1 model flees the unit for each point that you failed the test by. That means they're removed from the game. For units with a low bravery characteristic, this can be devastating. When all of the units that have lost models have taken their Battleshock test, the turn is over. You've now learned the basics of how to play Warhammer Age of Sigmar. A whole world of warfare awaits you.